Jai Hind children, welcome in your history class. As we were revising the first chapter, that is Rise of Nationalism in Europe, today we are going to revise the topics, that is unification of Germany, Italy and Britain children. Okay, now see the topic on the screen. Unification of Germany children. Nationalist feelings were widespread among middle class Germans who in 1848 they tried to unite the different regions of the German Confederation into a nation state governed by an elected parliament. So nationalist feelings were widespread among middle class Germans who in 1848 tried to unite the different regions of the German Confederation into a nation state, and the nation state should be governed by an elected parliament. So this liberal initiative to nation building, but it was suppressed, it was repressed by the combined forces of the monarchy, military and large land owners of Prussia. So the liberal initiative to nation building was however repressed by the combined forces of the monarchy and the military, supported by the large land owners of Prussia who were known as Junkers, Junkers, Junkers. From then on, Prussia took on the leadership of the movement for national unification. So Prussia took the initiative for German unification children. Its chief minister Otto von Bismarck, he was the architect of this unification process children. So Prussia took on the leadership of the movement for national unification. Its chief minister Otto von Bismarck, he was the architect of this process. He carried out with the help of the Prussian army and bureaucracy 3 wars over 7 years with Austria, Denmark and France, ended in Prussian victory and completed the process of unification. Clear? So in January 1871, the Prussian king William I, he was proclaimed German emperor in a ceremony held at Versailles. So on the bitterly cold morning of 18 January 1871, sorry. So on the cold morning of 18 January 1871, an assembly comprising the princes of the German states, representatives of the army, important Prussian ministers, including the chief minister Otto von Bismarck, gathered in the Hall of the Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles to proclaim the new German Empire, and which was headed by Kaiser William I of Prussia. So the nation building process in Germany had demonstrated the dominance of Prussian state power. So it was Prussia who took the initiative of the German unification, and its chief minister Otto von Bismarck, he played an important role in the German unification children. So the nation building process in Germany had demonstrated the dominance of Prussian state power, and the new state placed a strong emphasis on modernizing the currency, banking, legal and judicial systems in Germany. Prussian measures and practices often became a model for the rest of Germany children. Now see the next part, and that is unification of Italy children. So in Germany you have seen that Otto von Bismarck, he played an important role. Now let us see who played an important role in the unification of Italy children. So like Germany, Italy too had a long history of political fragmentations. Italians were scattered over several dynastic states as well as a multinational Habsburg Empire. So during the middle of the 19th century, Italy was divided into how many states? 7. So middle of the 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states, and out of 7 states only one, and that was Sardinia Piedmont. So do remember that children, during the middle of the 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states, and out of 7 states only one state, and that was Sardinia Piedmont. it was only ruled by an Italian princely house. The north was under Austrian Habsburgs, the center was ruled by the Pope, and the southern region was under the domination of the Bourbon kings of Spain. So even the Italian language had not acquired one common form and still had many regional and local variations. So during the 1830s, Giuseppe Mazzini, he had sought to put together a coherent program for a unitary Italian republic. So Mazzini, here you can see that he was trying to unite Italy. He had also formed a secret society called Young Italy for the dissemination of his goals, but he failed, children. So Giuseppe Mazzini was trying to unite Italy, but he failed. So the failure of revolutionary uprisings both in 1831 and 1848 meant that the mantle now fell on Sardinia Piedmont under its ruler King Victorian Emmanuel II to unify the Italian states through war. So Giuseppe Mazzini, he was trying to unite Italy, but he failed. Now the responsibility was given to the ruler of Sardinia Piedmont, and he was King Victor Emmanuel II. Now he was given the responsibility to unify the Italian states through war. So in the eyes of the ruling elites of this region, a unified Italy offered them the possibility of economic development and political dominance. So Chief Minister Cavour, Count Cavour. So Chief Minister Cavour, he led the movement to unify the regions of Italy. He was neither a revolutionary nor a democrat. Like many other wealthy and educated members of the Italian elite class, he spoke French much better than he did Italian. So through her tactful diplomatic alliance with France, which was engineered by Cavour, Sardinia Piedmont succeeded in defeating the Austrian forces in 1859. So first person who was trying to unify Italy was Giuseppe Mazzini. The second person who was trying to unify Italy and he was successful also, he was the Chief Minister Cavour, and through a tactful diplomatic alliance with France, Cavour which was engineered by Cavour, Sardinia Piedmont, he was succeeded in defeating the Austrian forces in 1859. Apart from regular troops, a large number of armed volunteers under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi joined the fray. So, in 1860, they marched into South Italy and the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies and succeeded in winning the support of the local peasants in order to drive out the Spanish rulers. So, in 1861, Victor Emmanuel II, he was proclaimed King of United Italy. So, children, in Germany, we have seen that Otto von Bismarck played an important role in the unification of Germany. But in unification of Italy, Mazzini, then Cavour and Garibaldi, these were the three personalities who played an important role in the unification process of Italy, children. So in 1861, and Victor Emmanuel II, he was proclaimed King of United Italy. So in this way, unification of Italy was completed and Victor Emmanuel II was proclaimed King of United Italy, children. So there were three personalities, three persons who played an important role in the unification of Italy, children. Mazzini, Garibaldi and Cavour. Do remember that. Now come to the next part, and that is unification of Britain. The model of the nation or the nation state, some scholars have argued in Great Britain. In Britain, the formation of the nation state, that was not the result of a sudden upheaval or revolution. It was a result of a long drawn out process. Now we are studying about Britain, children, the unification of Britain. So there was no British nation prior to the 18th century. Very strange, na? So there was no British nation prior to the 18th century, and the primary identities of the people who inhabited the British Isles were ethnic ones. English were English, then Welsh, Scot or Irish. And all of these ethnic groups, they were having their own cultural and political traditions. But as the English nation steadily grew in wealth, importance and power, it was able to extend its influence over the other nations of the islands. So the English Parliament, which had seized power from the monarchy in 1688 at the end of a protracted conflict, was an instrument through which a nation state with England at its center came to be forced. So the Act of Union, it was signed in 1707. It was signed between whom? Between England and Scotland, children. So Act of Union, it was signed between England and Scotland, and that resulted in the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. So the Act of Union, which was signed in 1707 between England and Scotland, resulted in the formation of the United Kingdoms of Great Britain. Meant in effect that England was able to impose its influence on Scotland, and the British Parliament was henceforth dominated by its English members. So the growth of the British identity meant that Scotland's culture and political institutions were systematically suppressed, and the Catholic clans that inhabited the Scottish Highlands, they suffered a terrible repression whenever they attempted to assert their independence. So the Scottish Highlands were forbidden to speak the Gaelic language or wear their national dress also, children, and large numbers were forcibly driven out of their homeland. Ireland suffered a similar fate. So it was a country deeply divided between the Catholics and Protestants. The English helped the Protestants of Ireland to establish their dominance over a large Catholic country, and Catholic revolts against British dominance were suppressed. After a failed revolt led by whom? Wolfe Tone and his United Irishmen in 1798. So they were trying to revolt against the British dominance. So Wolfe Tone and his United Irishmen, they were trying to revolt against England, children. So after a failed revolt led by Wolfe Tone and his United Irishmen in 1798, Ireland was also forcibly incorporated into the United Kingdom in 1801. So a new British nation was forced through the propagation of a dominant English culture. So the symbols of the new Britain, that is the British flag, Union Jack, the national anthem, God Save Our Noble King, and the English language were actively promoted, and the older nations survived only as subordinate partners in this union, children. So you can see that the Act of Union was signed between England and Scotland, and then it resulted in the formation of the United Kingdoms of the Great Britain, children, and England was able to impose influence on Scotland. Then Ireland was also forcibly incorporated into the United Kingdoms in 1801. So a new British nation was forced through the propagation of a dominant English culture, and the symbols of the new Britain were the British flag, the national anthem, the English language. They were actively promoted, and the older nations, means the Scotland and Ireland, they survived only as a subordinate partners in this union, children. Then now visualizing the nation. Children, artists in the 18th and 19th centuries, they found a way out by personifying a nation. In other words, you can say that they represented country as if it were a person. So nations were then portrayed as female figures, and the female form that was chosen to personify the nation did not stand for any particular woman in real life. Rather, it sought to give the abstract idea of the nation of a concrete form, and that is the female figure became an allegory of the nation, children. So the French artists used the female allegory to portray ideas such as liberty, justice, and the republic, children. Similar female allegories were invented by the artists in the 19th century to present the nation. So the allegory of France was Marianne, and allegory of Germany was Germania. So do remember that allegory of France, Marianne, it was a popular Christian name, and allegory of Germany was Germania. So Germania became the allegory of the German nation, And Germany wears a crown of oak leaves, as the German oak stands for heroism, children. And the last topic is nationalism and imperialism, children. Imperialism means just to expand the empire by acquiring more and more colonies. So the major European powers they were trying to expand the empire by acquiring more and more colonies. So by the last quarter of the 19th century, nationalism no longer retained its idealistic liberal democratic sentiments of the first half of the century, but became a narrow creed with limited ends. Then, during this period, nationalist groups they became increasingly intolerant of each other and ever ready to go to war. And the major European powers, in turn, manipulated the nationalist aspirations of the subject peoples in Europe to further their own imperialist aims, children. So, the most serious of nationalist tensions in Europe after 1871 was an area called the Balkans. So the Balkans was a region of geographical and ethnic variation comprising modern day Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, Macedonia, Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Slovenia, Serbia, Montenegro, whose inhabitants were broadly known as the Slavs, Slavs. So a large part of the Balkans was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. And the spread of the ideas of romantic nationalism in the Balkan regions together with the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire made this region very explosive. So the Balkan was a region of geographical and ethnic variations, children. A large part of the Balkan was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. And because of that cultural movement, romanticism and all, the spread of the ideas of romantic nationalism in the Balkans together will led to the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire and made this region very, very explosive. All through the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire had sought to strengthen itself through modernization and internal reforms, but with very little success. So one by one, its European subject nationalities broke away from its control and declared their independence, children. So the Balkan peoples based their claims for independence or political rights on nationality and used history to prove that they had once been independent but had subsequently been subjected by foreign powers. Hence, the rebellious nationalities in the Balkans thought of their struggles as attempts to win back their long-last independence. As the different Slavic nationalities struggles to define their identity and independence, the Balkan area became an area of intense conflict. The Balkan states were jealous of each other, and each state they wanted to gain more territory at the expense of the others. Matters were further complicated because the Balkans also became the scene of big power rivalry. So during this period, there was intense rivalry among the European powers over trade and colonies as well as naval and military might. So these rivalries were very evident in the way the Balkan problem unfolded. Each power, means all the big European powers like Russia, Germany, England, Austria, Hungary, they were keen on countering the hold of other powers over the Balkans and extending its own control over the sea. So this area, children, it became the scene of big power rivalry, and this led to a series of wars in the region and finally the First World War. So in the Balkans, this area became the scene of big power rivalry, and these rivalries were very evident in the way the Balkan problem unfolded. Each power, chahe it was Germany or Russia or England, they were trying to hold hold of other powers over the Balkans. They wanted to extend its own control over the sea, over this area, children, and finally this conflict led, or you can say that this led to a series of war in the region and finally the First World War. So nationalism aligned with the imperialism led Europe to disaster in 1940. And you know that First World War took place in 1914 and ended in 1918, children. So meanwhile, many countries in the world which had been colonized by the European powers in the 19th century began to oppose imperial domination. The anti-imperial movements that developed everywhere were nationalist in the sense that they all struggled to form independent nation states and were inspired by a sense of collective national unity forced in confrontation with imperialism. So there was anti-imperial movement also, children, also started, and European ideas of nationalism were nowhere replicated, children, for people everywhere developed their own specific variety of nationalism. But the idea that society should be organized into nation states came to be accepted as natural and universal. So in this way, nation states came into being, children. And for the test, you have to read the chapter thoroughly because the questions will be coming in between the chapter. Remember all the names, dates, children, and then only you can secure good marks in the test. So go through the chapter and learn all the important dates and the name of the journalists, painters, philosophers. Okay, and I know that you're going to secure very good marks in the test. So all the best for your test, children. Thank you and have a nice day, children. Take care.